Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Growth and Gratitude podcast. I am so honored to have our guest with us today, Kristin Mallon. She's a very, very special person to me who's not just a person who I deeply respect for her professional experience and knowledge, but she is a family member by marriage, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share that with you. Kristin is my cousin by marriage, so my second cousin, Kevin and Kristin, have been married, and I was at their wedding, and it was the most beautiful wedding, and they have since had 4 lovely children and recently came to visit us. They live on the East Coast, we live on the West Coast. We had the best time, and one of the most meaningful, important parts of the experience for me, in addition to getting to know the kids, was long talks with Kristin, who is a very experienced, very knowledgeable healthcare professional, which we'll share with you. And she helped me so much by teaching me so many things that my mainstream Western-based medical doctors have not taught me. So Kristin, welcome to the podcast. I'm so thankful that you're here and excited to have this conversation with you about getting quality healthcare. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes, you are a very important guest, and I'm so honored that you're here. Now, before we jump into talking about who you are and what you have to teach us about quality healthcare, this is the Growth and Gratitude podcast. So we always start with gratitude. And Kristin, one of the things I love about Kristin, everybody, is she is the most positive person, and she will catch you if you say something that's kind of negative and self-defeating. And I love that. And I welcome it. And I'm like, bring it on, Kristin. So I know she's going to be ready to share her 3 things she's grateful for very easily and very genuinely. Kristin, what are 3 things you're grateful for?
Yeah, so I've been practicing with this idea lately about gratitude, about retrospective gratitude. Sometimes I think people think about things that they're grateful for that are currently going on right this second, but I just read this book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen, and I can't remember his last name, which the book was okay. I wouldn't recommend it. I would give it about a 5 out of 10. But one of the cool things in there was he talked about not always focusing on current gratitude, but retrospective gratitude. So you reminded me of some things. I'm very grateful of the wedding that I had, and I'm very grateful about the families that I got to share with that time. I'm really grateful for the birth of my children. And I'm really grateful for the business that I had before this one, everything I learned and everything that went on in that business. So those are my 3 things.
I love that. And of course, you're teaching us a whole new concept around gratitude in addition to sharing what you're grateful for. And I think that's beautiful. I think that when we are so grateful for everything that we've experienced in our lives and remember to note those things and be present with all of those experiences, we're welcoming so much more into our life now and in the future. So it's a beautiful idea. I love it. I want to introduce our audience to you, but I think it would take forever to list all of your credentials because they're so extensive. I went on LinkedIn and there were 50 different acronyms and letters, and you have so much experience right now. What we really want to focus on is you are the co-founder and CEO, is that right, of FemGevity,
Yes.
which provides personalized menopause care designed by women. And you were so gracious to explain so much to me because I am your demographic, using the latest in diagnostics for safe, effective, unique, customized, personalized treatment plans for every woman. And I experienced that directly because you had recommendations for me based on my symptoms and my experiences and my physical unique situation. And so I'm incredibly impressed with what you're doing. But can you tell us more about your background, your experience, and your credentials?
A lot of those letters are really just kind of like code for how medicine communicates to each other. And I think most people are familiar with MD, medical doctor, and a lot of people are now starting to become familiar with APRN, which is advanced practice nurse practitioner. So I think most people see 1 or 2 of these. So I actually am a certified nurse midwife, which is a type of APRN or advanced practice nurse practitioner. So my letter CNM means certified nurse midwife. And then all the other letters kind of after my name just mean the type of certifications I have related to obstetrics and nursing. And my background is really, I became a midwife in 2006, and I started in private practice right away. And there's a big difference between private practice and clinic work, which is, I think we'll probably get into that today. And I was able to kind of understand that side of medicine, and I worked with a practice for a while, and then I started my own practice with a physician in New Jersey in 2012. And I grew that and then kind of folded that up into the parent company that was working with that practice. And now I'm working on FemGevity.
Thank you, Kristin, I'm sure there's a lot more you could say, but thank you for that brief overview of your background, your credibility, your experience, and I know I've experienced it firsthand. So one of the things we really want to help people understand is how they can get the best quality healthcare for themselves. And as you said, I think a lot of people have the mindset that Western medicine has all the answers, and if they go to their doctor, and we're now finding, of course, that unfortunately we can't always get all the quality healthcare that we really need, especially if at certain stages of life, and if we have unique cases that aren't the textbook cases. So can you tell us kind of, let's start broad and then we'll get specific. What are your thoughts and top tips on how we can find quality healthcare for ourselves, whether I'm a busy executive who doesn't have a lot of time for doctor visits, or whether I'm a mom at home with my kids and I can't figure out which doctor is going to answer my questions best, or where to go and seek healthcare outside of the system? Can you give me top tips for that to start with in general?
Yeah. So I have three main tips that I think are really helpful to share with anyone listening. So the first one is to kind of understand the ins and outs of your health insurance, like what your benefits are, what they mean. And that's kind of complicated. So even like certain large companies, like tech companies and banks, will even have insurance liaisons or affiliates that actually work for those companies to help their employees understand their health benefits. But just like really basic stuff, overall, there's really kind of three types of insurance. And I think a lot of people don't even know this, which there's HMO insurance, EPO insurance, and PPO insurance. So you're talking about really insurance that allows you to go in network, that only allows you to have in-network access to doctors that are in your network, which means that those doctors have a contract with the large insurance organization like Aetna, Cigna, United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or a PPO plan, which will let you go out of network, will let you utilize physicians, nurse practitioners, providers that are not in your network. And a lot of affiliated or complementary medicine practitioners are out of network or use this PPO plan. And I think in general, a lot of people want to avoid out of network. That scares them, but it's something that is usually a great benefit to have, and gives you more access to, typically, not always, but a lot of times, higher quality doctors that aren't just running a kind of like a factory, running on volume. Their practice isn't running on volume because out-of-network physicians get reimbursed at higher amounts. And so they're able to a lot of times spend more time. Doesn't always mean they're better, but that's just kind of a really general place to start.
Yeah. Okay. So first tip, one of the first tips is really understand your insurance. If you have health insurance, really understand what it provides, what are the services that are available to you, what kinds of doctors can you visit, what's in network. But I just want to really be honest about the fact that one of the things we're talking about is that if you have the means, sometimes you're going to want to go outside of your network to get the best quality and the most customized and thorough care for some of the needs that you may have. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And then a lot of times your insurance company doesn't want you to utilize your out-of-network benefits because it's more money for them. So on average, generally, physicians will get, and I say physicians, I mean all healthcare practitioners, will get 3 to 5 times what an in-network rate will get. And so that usually that usually kind of makes the insurance companies have this incentive to not want their patients to go out of network. And so sometimes, like, patients will call their insurance to get information about what is a co-insurance, what is a deductible, what is an in-network deductible, what is an out-of-network deductible, and they'll get frightened off of using an out-of-network doctor or an out-of-network practitioner. So I always recommend that if you're considering using out-of-network practitioners, to actually call the practitioner themselves and you can a lot of times give your insurance over to those practitioners. They'll run what they usually call like an insurance verification or an insurance check. and they'll be able to tell you what your exact cost will be. And sometimes patients are surprised by how low the cost actually is.
Okay, so that gives us hope. That's I love that your optimistic take on that. And I'm in that process right now, as you well know. So my next question is really about like what are the biggest healthcare challenges that you see? And I know your area has always been primarily women and the various stages of women's health with childbirth and now menopause. And so a lot of our conversations that you and I had really helped me understand that I probably wasn't going to get the kind of personalized, customized care I needed with a traditional gynecologist. And you said gynecologists, OBGYNs, like understandably, there are wonderful ones and amazing ones, but they're delivering babies and they're doing surgeries and so if your company, FemGevity, really provides that personalized, customized care for women in menopause, which is me, or perimenopause. It's actually a really longer period, as you'll probably share. So if that's one area like that really the mainstream medical healthcare system, I feel, is not really serving and doesn't have the most extensive set of services for us to help us understand what we need and treatment that can really help us through this, what can be a very challenging period. What can you say about that, and what other areas like you see as some of the big areas of concern where people really should kind of take charge of their own healthcare and know what the options are?
Yeah, so I think I can kind of tie that into maybe tip two, which is I think in medicine, we need to start asking ourselves a better question. So the question that most physicians, again, like I said, that's a group of including all practitioners, are asking themselves is, how do I prevent this patient from dying? How do I prevent morbidity and mortality? And I think a better question that I'd really love to see us asking in medicine is, how do I optimize health? And so when you talk about challenges, that's one of the biggest challenges I think we have right now, especially like at FemGevity, we're longevity practitioners, and we're asking the question, how do we optimize these patients' health that we're seeing? And so that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest challenges facing medicine now is we kind of have this, like, we're still kind of outdated and antiquated. I mean, we still do things like fax and we still use pagers and like it's 1993. And it's no wonder that medicine is such this like huge train with so much inertia. To get it to like slow down, stop, and then change direction is a huge endeavor. And that's why I think companies like mine, you're going to start to see more companies like this coming up, which are utilizing this out of network model that we talked about, allowing people to use FSAs and HSAs, which are health savings accounts for their healthcare, come about. And then when you see a practitioner, especially when you're not chronically sick or chronically ill, figuring out like, okay, HMO, PPO, EMO, EPO, like, is what type of insurance am I using? But then is this practitioner going to help me answer the question, how do I optimize my health? Or are they going to help me answer are they really like focusing on how do I treat morbidity and mortality? So that's really, I think, kind of the biggest challenge I see right now in healthcare in general.
Yeah, I think that's really a paradigm shift for a lot of people, and to really let that settle in, everybody. And it reminds me of an article I saw that you posted on LinkedIn about, it's about health span, not lifespan. We're
Yeah.
not just trying to work to live longer, because if our quality of life is really poor, what's the point of that? Trying to expand health span and help people optimize their health throughout and people are living longer than ever. So your
Yeah,
question is about the
absolutely.
quality.
Yeah, and I think like one of the other major challenges too, and I think we see this a lot in the news, what's going on with pretty much anytime you turn on the TV, is that we don't also want to forget about mental health either. So it's not just physical health. We also want to focus on mental health. So I think that those two challenges are the ones that I feel most passionate about. And because who wants to live longer if you're depressed or miserable, or you have the tools to kind of have an exciting and optimistic life?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And that's what our conversations really brought up for me, because when women are in menopause, many of the challenges can be more around emotional health and well-being and mental health, and it's all connected. And often, I know we've talked about, if you're seeing a doctor who's like focused on your arm, or they're not asking you all these questions about how you're feeling and how your mental health and your emotional well-being are connected to your physical situation and state. And so the way you practice, I know, takes all of that into account. Are there populations or certain healthcare concerns that you think are especially, I don't want to say at risk, but especially kind of ignored in the traditional? I feel menopause is one of them. I feel maybe as people get older in general, because we're living longer and it's kind of a population that has not been studied and served historically as well. Or are there other populations that you think are a particular concern?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many populations that are definitely, I think, on the fringe and ostracized and not really kind of looked at. And for me, FemGevity, we definitely are focusing on women or people who identify as being a woman, and also with people who are above the reproductive age. And a lot of OBGYN is really focused on women who are 40 and under. And I think that there's so many opportunities to kind of bring to the surface the different populations, but at FemGevity, we kind of are very focused on like this very broad women who are 40 plus, because we go into longevity and we focus so much on longevity and optimizing health, and then women in general.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm very thankful for that. I was not aware of that, how much more there is to know. Maybe we can get into some a little bit of, to show your medical knowledge. Like, you taught me the connections between, and I know your company does a lot of testing that you can't get in the traditional, in the more mainstream system, but you were teaching me the connections between gut health, cognitive health, and how that's tied to menopause and hormonal changes. And what are some of the medical areas that we need to be more knowledgeable about, that you're constantly teaching people about, that we can look into and be aware of in terms of how they're impacting our health?
Yeah, so I think there's like 5 areas that we really focus on. So definitely 100% gut microbiome health, because there's so much coming out now about that, about how gut microbiome health is tied to every single system, from skin to emotions to the not just the digestive system, hormonal health, brain health, all of it. I think another one that's really important is allergy testing, because even though you might not have a severe allergy, you might have a sensitivity, and then that could be leading to inflammation, which is going to then contribute to chronic disease. So I always kind of encourage our patients to get some form of allergy testing, definitely testing of hormones. And so hormones, especially for women, are really important because they change so much. Like, a woman will lose her hormones, her estrogen hormone will actually go to 1% of what it was in her reproductive time during menopause. So that's a significant shift. It's very different for men. And it's something that we are like very passionate about educating women about that, and then giving them really specific and customized options to kind of help them, support them in that transition. And then we do a lot of testing for genetics and genomics, and we actually have a test that will use a lot of SNP technology to get really precision-based information. So for example, for myself, like, I have a gene that actually makes turmeric or curcumin not beneficial for me. So then that's like a really popular supplement, and that's a very popular supplement in menopause and perimenopause, but it actually is harmful for me and leads to more inflammation. So that's another test that we also kind of use a lot. And then we utilize one of my favorite tests, which is a micronutrient test. So a micronutrient test will tell you a lot about how your body is functioning on a cellular level, and also how much you have in reserve of certain nutrients. So your body does a great job of maintaining homeostasis in your blood, so that your magnesium level and your folate levels and any level that you test from blood alone is going to come back relatively normal. And a lot of allied practitioners would actually use like the ranges within normal to kind of look for deficiencies. But now we have micronutrient testing, which actually lets us test how the nutrients are operating on a cellular level in the plasma. And it tells us things about mitochondria. It tells us about oxidative stress. It talks us about fatty acids, amino acids. So it's incredibly comprehensive, and it's really giving you this really wonderful, robust amount of information, so that we can kind of work towards optimizing health as opposed to managing chronic disease.
Thank you so much for that. I've
Yeah.
heard a lot of these terms, and I know they're legitimate. I mean, you have studies and studies that show all of this, and everybody's talking about gut microbiome these days. So I think whereas maybe even just a few years ago, some people would think that this is all really alternative, I want people to know it's not. The science is there on the connections between all of these systems and the need for, again, much more precision testing, to use your word. I really love that, where I've had so many times where I'm just not feeling right and I know something's off, but I go to the doctor and I get all the blood work and everything looks fine. And
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
hearing one kind of alternative doctor say, "Oh, they're just looking for, like you said, like something that's going to kill you. It's not going to be for optimal health."
Yeah. To support medicine, or in some ways, kind of like modern medicine where we are now, they're really looking at managing chronic disease. And so many of us want more than that from our doctors and our practitioners. We want to understand, like, well, how can I improve my exercise regimen? How can I build more muscles? How can I prevent the wasting that comes with age from deterioration of the spine and deterioration of muscle mass? So that's really where our company is focused, but also where, like, I would love to see anyone who's kind of in their 40s and 50s, kind of like at an advanced stage in their career, not wait until they get a chronic disease in their 60s or 70s to really like start getting into medicine, or really utilizing or accessing like what medicine has to offer.
I love that so much. And I love how you said that to me, Kristen. I just want to say, on a really personal note, when we were having our conversations, you said to me, "You're at the perfect age to look at all of
Yes.
this and to take charge." And I was like, "Really?" Because I feel like it's over. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be able to
Yeah,
fix
no.
some of these things. I just have to live with them. And you're like, "No, no, you're still young enough that you can really get all of this managed, not just managed, but you said you can feel great. You can not only feel as great as you did in your 20s or 30s, but now you have the wisdom and the experience in life to bring to your life and your experiences and your work and your relationships." And it was just, I hadn't heard any healthcare practitioner say things like that to me. It feels like, gosh, I'm at the end and I'm in menopause and everything's falling apart. And I just love your attitude about that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about it, from someone who menstruates, like they really only spend about 35 years of their hopefully 90-year life menstruating. So it's only a third of their life. So two-thirds that are spent not menstruating. So
Mm.
it's actually the norm to not menstruate. Technically, if you look at it that way, you're going to spend the majority of your life not menstruating. So kind of like more normalizing that, and also really giving women like yourself, because when you have young kids, you don't really have the time, or you're not sleeping, or the energy to kind of put into your health what you do sometimes when your kids are a little bit older, and maybe you're
Hmm.
in your 40s or your 50s, and even into your 60s. I get my mom going on her optimization, and I don't want her to just wait, or my family or myself, anybody, to just wait for chronic disease before they start taking action.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. We need to hear more of that. We need more professionals like you who are saying that. So I think we could talk about all this forever, but I wanted to give people a taste and an introduction to you and the work you're doing and how much more there really is to learn for us to get the quality healthcare we need and really take charge of our own healthcare. And not, of course, we need to listen to our doctors and we need to do the standard testing and do our yearly visits and all of that. But I really want people to be aware that there might be a need to look into additional support in the form of the kind of support that Kristin and her company FemGevity provide. So I want to ask you, Kristin, before we wrap up, what more should we know? Is there anything because you could talk, Kristin could educate us all for hours and hours, but I wanted to just whet everyone's appetite, give a little bit. Is there anything more we should know about taking charge of our own healthcare and making sure it's high quality? And then please let us know everything about where we can find you and all that you have out there in the world, because I think people are going to be really interested in potentially reaching out.
Yeah, so I think the just to kind of wrap up the three tips that we kind of started in the beginning,
Hmm.
like definitely consider PPO, using your PPO, HSA, FSA to kind of get access to providers who are really asking the question, how can I optimize health, and not just waiting for chronic disease. And then the third tip I would say too is like that a lot of times we go to our friends or even social media to kind of get referrals, and a really good place like yourself to get a referral is from a medical person. So most people do know a nurse, a doula, an anesthesiologist or a chiropractor or someone who's in the medical field. And those are really, I think, the most cherished and valued referrals, because somebody could have a really nice personality and a really nice demeanor and get really good reviews on certain sites. But to get a recommendation from someone who really understands medicine is really helpful. And then I'm happy to answer any more questions that anyone has. Can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn at Kristin Mallon, or our website is femgevityhealth.com. And we are on all the socials on Instagram and Facebook, just at FemGevity. You can also message us directly on the website. And a lot of times any messages that are directly addressed to me on the social, especially on Instagram, will get to me directly and I can answer them directly.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kristin. And
yeah, thank you.
I've learned a ton from this conversation because we made it more general for everybody. This is for everybody. Please share this podcast episode. And I want to preview what we're about to do right now. You will see a bonus episode where Kristin and I are going to do a deeper dive into menopause and into specialized, customized, personalized care for women in menopause. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because all my friends and my clients and everybody I know asks me about this all the time, because they know I'm in this stage and I've been researching and I've been trying to get the right kind of support. And Kristin is the perfect expert to give us that information. So don't miss the bonus episode that'll be coming up next. And we're going to talk more about menopause, and that will be relevant for you, regardless of whether you are a woman, identify as a woman, identify as a man, because there's somebody in your life who's going to be or who is experiencing menopause. And I can just tell you from my experience, there is such a lack of credible and helpful information out there about how we can get support during this time to continue to live our best lives and not just settle for a diminished life with a lot of difficulties that can be treated and that we can get support for in a variety of ways. So make sure to check out the bonus episode, but we're going to say goodbye for now. So thank you, Kristin.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Don't miss the next bonus episode. Bye, everybody.